What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Bleach: The Thousand Year Blood War. This is episode 23, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Yeah. So we immediately pick up shortly after that, big twist at the end of last week's episode, in which Hitsugaya ends up being turned into a zombie by Giselle, and we can see how well we immediately get to see like how dangerous he really is, just like how easily he beats Ikaku and Yumichika, just effortlessly, and and because he's like
brutal.
Because he's a zombie, he just not hold back in how brutal his attacks are against both Ikaku and Yumichika. He just blatantly just slashes them across the torso.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just something that maybe was changed from the manga to the anime adaptation, but I was really hoping that we would get an explanation as to what exactly happened with Hitsugaya and how Giselle turned him into a zombie.
Yeah,
because we don't really get that in this episode. It's just sort of, of course, Hitsugaya joining the fight, and fighting off the, Ikaku, and also Mayuri. But yeah, no real explanation as to how he got that way. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. But of course, we also see that Giselle had also done the same thing to some of the other captains too, where he had turned them into zombies.
Yeah, Kensei Rose, and then Rangiku also got turned into a zombie as well.
Oh, I must have. Was that a quick scene? Because I must have missed that actually.
Rangiku was turned into a zombie as well, because she was next to. Yeah, she was next.
Yeah, well,
to
that would make sense.
When that happened. Yeah. But what happened during the fight between zombie Hitsugaya and Mayuri? Basically, Mayuri ends up using this weird-looking drug that I guess that causes Hitsugaya to reawaken like moments before he ends up killing Mayuri, at least on several occasions from what we can tell.
It was another really like trippy kind of scene. They even had some of the same music. They did play some of the same music eventually in this episode with that they played with Shinji when Shinji revealed his Bankai. But they basically sort of repeat his death. Mayuri dies in like 3 different ways. And then he just keeps coming back, and Hitsugaya like realizes that something's wrong.
Yeah, Mayuri, like according to him, that Hitsugaya ended up killing him at least a dozen times. From according to him. I mean, for us, we only saw him kill Mayuri like at least twice, but apparently, whatever drugs that he used on Hitsugaya ended up incapacitating him soon after this.
Yeah. I mean, and we also see that I think one of the Mayuri's Iran cards gets I think it was I forget what his name is, but he ends up I think getting I'm pretty sure I think he's killed. I
don't think he's dead. I think he's just basically just bleeding to death at this point.
Yeah. I mean, was it Giselle or was it one of the zombies? I think that gets it might have been Giselle. I think.
Maybe I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah. So I mean, Giselle is pretty because I mean he's pretty pissed off at this point because of what Mayuri has done. That he's able to use this drug on the zombies to sort of like bring them back to their senses.
I wouldn't say it brought them back to their senses. Well, I think they're just mainly just in absolute horrific pain at this point. Whatever.
Well, he does end up like turning the zombies against Giselle, because now I guess he's technically in control of them after he uses the drug on them.
Yeah, and then what's surprising is how easily Giselle gets taken out soon after this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm convinced that they really have gotten the upper hand yet or anything, but we also transition back to what's going on with the Sternritter girls, and they finally reveal this guy. I forget what his name is. Like he's he also has this like weird hallucination sort of ability to, ability to control people.
You mean
Um,
Pepe?
yeah, Pepe. Um, we've kind of seen him. We've seen him like briefly before, but this is the first time I guess we got like properly introduced to him.
Yeah, like basically Byakuya is able to dispatch. Um, well, he fights off three different Stern Ritters by himself, and I don't know if they're really dead or not. I think I could assume one of them's dead after he used uh, his 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 Bankai on one of them, but I don't know what about the
Well,
other two, like Candace and I think what was it, the other guy?
yeah, the guy with the gun.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah, yeah. I mean, Senbon Sakura is pretty powerful. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would be surprised if some of them are, survived that. Well, I don't know. I guess that it's possible that they did, but I mean, yeah, they're all kind of in pretty bad shape. And well, all the Sternberger girls pretty much are after Byakuya ends up fighting them.
well, I think two other Sternritter girls were still in the area, but for whatever reason, like Pepe decides to take control of one of them and then have one of the Sternritter girls punch. What was it? The blonde looking girl
Meninis.
away. Yeah, Meninis I think punched little Toto away in order to, I guess, remove them from the equation because he feels like he wants to be the one to beat Byakuya. Um,
Yeah.
so it just gets into a whole back and forth between between Byakuya and Shuhei, who's still under the control of Pepe. But of course, Pepe tries on several occasions to take control of Byakuya, but to no avail for whatever reason. And
I
then
guess he just must have been like his he must have just been like so strong that it didn't really affect him or something. I don't know if they really explain it.
Mhm. Yeah, and he also says that he has the ability to control his Zanpakuto Senbon Sakura because apparently had that thing has a soul of sorts.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, yeah, as we know, the Zanpakuto also are like sort of, well, either like they have a soul, but they're also like technically an extension of the Soul Reaper themselves.
yeah, and it gets to the point where I guess I don't know. You could say Byakuya is being run into a corner, but then suddenly Mayuri and his and, and the zombified Soul Reapers that he controls now end up saving Byakuya at the last minute.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, which ends up uh, I guess, sort of breaking the control that Pepe has over some of the people he has under his subjection.
Yeah, and then soon after, well, they of course they use, I think, what was it, the zombified Kensei, basically just using his Bankai to basically pummel Pepe to near death and just knock him out somewhere like in this Arete. And then soon
Yeah.
afterwards, Pepe, uh, encounters little Toto again, and this time, like little Toto decides to, just kill him for payback for what he just did by having Meninas to punch little Toto away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looked like she ate him. Like
Yeah,
yeah. um, but yeah, I mean, he gets he dies in a pretty terrible way.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so well, of course, that's the end of the episode. But of course, there is a post-credit scene, which shows Yuhaba, Uryu, and Hashwalth finally arriving up to the Solar Palace. And of
mm,
course, Yuhaba points out that this is the first time that he's ever seen the Soul Palace in his life, because he's been mostly fighting in the Seirite for the entire time. But yeah,
yeah,
that's the episode. I mean, it's a weird episode. Like you said, a little bit trippy at times in terms of like how Mayuri handles his own battles and such. I mean, this is the first time we've seen Mayuri fight in this way. He's used like this kind of trickery before by
mm,
using this unique looking drugs. against a variety of different opponents. But this one is just like it just feels like it just feels like whatever he's injecting Hitsugaya with, it just seems like just it's more painful to Hitsugaya you know as a zombie than it would be if he was still alive.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine it's just because like his like his zombified brain is like trying to resist it or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this was also just one of the weirder episodes as well. I mean, and now that's also kind of saying something, and compare it to some of the stuff we've already seen. But some of like Pepe's abilities, for instance, are just really just. It's just like it's funny how like yeah, the Thousand Year Blood War is a lot more dark and serious, but then there are moments like this where you see some of what Pepe does, and you just kind of remember there are definitely a lot of moments of levity in Bleach like that. Where it's like it's also kind of hard to take seriously because you're just like kind of taken out of it. But yeah, I mean it was another really good episode though. Regardless, just pretty much a continuation of the first one, where this one's just called Marching Out the Zombies 2. So it's just a continuation of that fight.
Yeah,
And also, of course, sort of showing the more of the fight between the captains and some of the other Stern Ritter. And yeah, it's another great episode as well, even though it was mostly just pretty much mostly just fight scenes for the most part. And we, like I said, the only thing I was a little bit disappointed with was that we don't really get any kind of explanation as to what happened with Giselle turning some of the captains into zombies. I just kind of would like maybe some kind of a flashback, or just something like maybe it'll happen after they come out of their zombified state, where we kind of learn maybe what Giselle did, or what how exactly that happened.
yeah.
I mean, of course, as we know, the last time we saw Hitsugaya, like we know that he was incapacitated. We don't really know like some of the other captains, like Rangiku, for instance. Like we don't really know how exactly that happened with her. I mean, I'm guessing Giselle maybe must have ambushed her somehow, but
Well, I think she was Rangiku was
yeah,
knocked out during her fight against Boss B as well. So it,
yeah.
it could have
I
happened sometime after the whole Boss B fight.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you could probably assume how it probably happened. I just would have liked to have seen just maybe seen how it happened exactly. But yeah, other than that though, I don't really have too much else to say about the episode. Like I said, another really great episode, and they've all been consistently like really good. So I mean, I've been, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen like an anime have this kind of comeback, like Bleach has.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but
for my opinion, I do have to. I don't know. I feel like I need to be a little bit more critical about this episode, because I feel like the zombie Hitsugaya just felt a little bit underwhelming, because it just like it just felt like it kind of ended before it could really start, because it just immediately gets like the zombie Hitsugaya, it just immediately gets taken out as soon as he just appears out of nowhere. Like
yeah,
he
well,
immediately takes down both Ikaku and Imichika, but then Mayuri steps in and just completely just ends it just immediately right at that point.
Well, I think it makes sense when you consider how. I mean, from what we know about those characters, like Hitsugai is really powerful, but I do feel like in a fight, even with his powers like unrestrained by any kind of morality, or if he was just fighting just to fight, I do think that Mayuri still would have probably had the upper hand because of his sort of the ways he messes with people's perception and stuff. Like Hitsugai is pretty powerful, but I think that I mean we even saw that when he fought like Aizen, for instance, about how he can be tricked with like illusions and hallucinations, and that's kind of what, similar to I guess what Mayuri would do in a fight, which is kind of what he does end up doing here, where he sort of like messes with him and makes
Yeah,
him think he's seeing things. So I think in that way he would probably get the upper hand.
yeah.
So
I,
I
I'm
mean I think it makes sense when you consider I guess what you'd say like their like each of their individual power levels are. I mean yeah, like Hitsugaya would pretty much wipe the floor with somebody like Yumichika and Ikaku. Like I think he's definitely way more powerful than they are. But when it comes to Mayuri, I do think Mayuri probably, like he fairly easily probably would have gotten the upper hand in a fight with him. But I don't know. Maybe somebody can
Yeah.
let me know if I'm wrong about that. But I do feel like that's probably pretty accurate.
Also, it kind of makes sense that Mayuri, despite his more sadistic, methods, like he seems like the right person in a way to bring back not just Hitsugaya, but also Kensei Rose and Rangiku back from their zombified state.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is like I need to be critical about is of course this Pepe character that just like literally just shows up out of nowhere to fight against Byakuya, and he immediately just gets taken out, like literally by the end of this episode.
I do wish that he had a little bit more screen time before he, we end up seeing him in a fight, because we don't really know anything about who he is, and this is like our first time getting introduced to him. So yeah, I mean, like I do kind of wish that we knew who he even was before this. I mean, of course we see him before this, but we don't actually like. He doesn't really get any more screen time other than just like appearing once or twice.
I felt like the Aran cars in the first series had a slightly better backstory than these Stern Ritters. They just pop out of nowhere, to be honest. Because I was taken aback by his personality and his presentation of sorts, but then he just gets unceremoniously just killed off by one of his own people by the end of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at least with the Arankar arc that we got a really good feel for each of the Espada, and we got to know like a lot about who they were. I mean, they do try to give each of the Stern Ritter, some screen time, and we do get to get a good sense of who most of them were. I mean, maybe with like the exception of like like you said, Pepe, and also I would say Gremmy, because I don't even think we really see Gremmy much at all before that one fight with Kenpachi. So we don't really know anything about him either until he like introduces himself, and we find out who he is.
I mean, Gremmy played a much better role than what Pepe just did in this episode. I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the whole episode was pretty much dedicated to his fight with Kenpachi, whereas this one, like, I was like sort of like half the episode was Pepe showing up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, honestly, I still don't understand the point. I would have been comfortable with a lot of the Stern Ritters they just introduced us, like even before this episode. I mean, I would have loved to see a little bit more with a fight with Candace and maybe the other two Stern Ritters against Byakuya, but I don't understand what the point is. Like, just suddenly introducing a character like Pepe out of nowhere like this, and then just him getting killed off soon after this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I do wish there was a little bit more of an introduction to Pepe, but I don't know. It felt like he wasn't really, like I took him more, I guess, as, well, not really a joke character, but just like you weren't really supposed to take him that seriously, I suppose. So I guess that might have been why he didn't really last too long. I mean, if you remember from like the first core, there were other Stern Ritter that showed up and were only like lasted like a minute or two before getting taken out. Like for instance, that one scene where Kenpachi just takes that, just rips that guy's throat out, and he's just, he doesn't really last long at all. So I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like it's just played for a joke.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, that guys. That all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.